All right, here we go. Infosec Decoded 32 with a reduced staff that actually showed up here on Memorial Day, which is nice, with the rogue killer drone. So starting with Kaitlyn, has got Google location settings.
Yes, so CNET has a story about Google putting its settings buried so deep that people could not turn off their location settings. And so this is one of those old scummy tricks in, the capitalist playbook where you sign up for a service that's really easy. Just put in your name and your credit card number. You're signed up. It's that simple. Oh, but if you want to cancel, call our hotline, wait 30 minutes, talk to a person,
That's AOL.
Yeah, it's just like AOL. It's one of those scummy things that a lot of tech companies have done. And it's still going on. Google's continuing to do it. They don't want people turning off their location settings. But they still want to comply with the laws. So of course they just buried the settings very deep within their applications, and apparently court documents verify this was intentional, not just oops, we kind of made it too confusing, or our UI wasn't good enough. No, they intentionally buried their settings so that people would not turn it off.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Yep. So we'll see if they actually get punished in some way for that. I'm not sure that's really exactly illegal. That's the one thing about it.
Well, no, it's not illegal to make well, I mean, it depends what kind of fraud you're doing. Like I said, I do think you can have a lawsuit on your hand if you do like the old AOL technique where, give your phone number and your credit card number to sign up and spend, 2 days trying to cancel your service. I do think there might be a class action lawsuit there, but since there's no actual money involved in this one, it's I don't know if there's going to be any, but apparently this was part of a court claim. So I don't know what's going on, but it's just a scummy thing that these developers do.
Yeah, this reminds me of I tweeted a story a couple of days ago about Alexa is now going to share a little bit of your bandwidth with neighboring Alexas to make a net so devices can phone home for various reasons. And hundreds of people freaked out and said, those horrible bums, they're invading my privacy. And I'm like, I really don't think it's that big a deal. I mean, all your traffic is going over shared networks anyway. But enormous number of people are freaking out and saying, this is horrible. I'm throwing in Alexa and everything. I don't think it's technically justified. Anyway, all right. And then, okay, so I got some of this politics that got me interested because I was very surprised at how like a Supreme Court justice said, oh, you people just need to talk to Republicans and stop fighting with them and everything will be fine. And Joe Biden doesn't seem to be doing anything. The New Abnormal had an interview with a longtime political reporter saying, why is Biden apparently doing nothing about voting rights? They're just meekly giving up, letting Joe Manchin block it, not bothering to make a Joe Lewis act or Senator Lewis act from past, or whoever he was. And they just seem completely content to let the Republicans totally rig the system in every state and just do nothing about it like they're doing. And he said, and he said, what they're doing, this is an official policy. The Biden administration has decided that rather than make a big show of fighting the Republicans, they're going to just try to make normal government without any drama and accomplish things people can understand, like jobs and vaccine and infrastructure, and rely upon that to make them popular enough to win the midterms, rather than actually doing anything about the massive changes the Republicans are making to rig the voting system so they won't have a chance to win. And he said it's a really big gamble, and I don't think they're right, but that is their official policy, is to just not bother fighting the Republicans at all. So that's an interesting position. And I was very pleased to see in Texas late last night, the Democrats managed to block Texas's voting restrictions, which are just amazing. The kind of thing that would have been absolutely forbidden. Like they blocked, if you're going to drive a vehicle carrying many voters to the polls, that's illegal now because it's specifically targeted at Black voters who meet at church and then drive in. They also changed the hours so you can't go in after church on Sunday, and just incredibly obvious, blatantly racist stuff that the Supreme Court would have blocked until 2013 when they decided they just don't care. But the Democrats blocked it by just walking out. I've heard of this before in Texas. In Texas, the state government can only meet for half a year once every 2 years because they just hate government in general. And if the enough of the state legislators leave the state, then there's not enough people in the state to make a quorum. So Democrats, even in their minority, can just leave the state for a few days and nothing can pass while they're gone, even if they're outvoted. And they did that. So they're going to have a special section to extend the legislation beyond its normal limit if they want to pass this law to crush the black vote in Texas, and they might do that and they might not. So anyway, and then I saw this analysis of Black Wall Street that got my interest. I wasn't very interested in Black history until a few years ago, and then I started realizing how important it is and how much it's been erased from our history books. I didn't learn any of this stuff in grade school. And this, of course, was one of Trump's big things, was to push, in response to the 1619 project, to push blocking Black history in America so that our children don't feel unpatriotic by realizing that America did something bad. And I'm watching it have exactly the effect that the liberals always said it would have, that if you don't teach this history, people will just continue to be racist and think it's fine. And, that's how you get people like Rich Lowry, and Republicans in general say that Black people are fine. They should stop complaining. There's no discrimination. That's all over, when it is really not over. So anyway, I'm very pleased to see a lot of evidence that with the George Floyd protest and everything else, a large group of people have now again decided to care about civil liberties in America. And I think hopefully we'll live through another renaissance of that. We'll see. It's a very exciting time in politics, which is why I'm so focused on it lately. We're really facing a crisis just like the 50s and 60s civil rights movement, when there's two huge ideas of how America should be going forward colliding vigorously. Anyway, that's what I was most interested in. And Irvin's got the analysis of this rootkit. I thought this was very nice.
Yeah, it's just interesting. So this rootkit, Facefish, apparently it's called, is a two-parter. It attacks Linux systems, 64-bit. It has where's the two parts to it? Well, besides using the vulnerability to get in, it uses a dropper to get on the device. That dropper releases a rootkit, and it has several rootkits apparently. And then it connects back to the C2, and off it goes.
Yeah, and I'm very pleased to see this analysis. And I see a lot of techniques that I am covering in my malware analysis course. So that's when I first thought of it. I see these to see if we're covering enough of these techniques, and we're covering quite a few of them. So it's a very nice, clean analysis.
Yeah, I like to get these rather than just the simple articles that say, "Oh, there's this thing happening." Okay, that's cute, but we want to know more.
Yeah. Then the technical details are very nice. It's even using UPX and so on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so, Kaitlyn, I was amazed by this. So the International Space Station actually got hit by debris.
Yes, sciencealert.com has an article by Michelle Starr going over the fact that the International Space Station was finally hit by space debris, and there's a significant hole in the space station. Luckily, the hole is in one of the arms that moves things around. The International Space Station has a bunch of arms that are basically like claws, and they can grab onto stuff. And a small piece of space debris, we don't know exactly what it was, but it punctured through the arm, leaving a giant gaping hole through the structure. And this has been something we've been worried about for a long time, is just the amount of space debris, and in particular, the very small space debris that we can't track. Anything smaller than like a baseball, we just cannot track it in orbit.
They're moving really fast. I would think anything the size of a bullet would be a real worry.
Yeah, no, anything even smaller than bullets. Now, keep in mind that anything in orbit is, as long as you're not like in the same orbit, is going many times faster than a bullet. So, even something as small as a bullet or a small pebble could do major damage to something like the International Space Station, which is designed to be as light as possible. The International Space Station is not a giant lead sealed, enclosure. It's really mostly aluminum. It's really quite fragile. It's very akin to like a 747. And space debris will go right through it. And of course, when space debris hits the International Space Station, that just makes more space debris to hit other things. And so we're really starting to feel the effects of all the junk that we're putting into space. And thankfully, no one was hurt. Thankfully, it didn't puncture a where the astronauts living. But imagine, my thought was, I mean, that they got lucky. It went through an arm. There's probably been tons of other close calls they didn't even know about, things that just maybe passed, less than a kilometer away. But what if, and this is a worst case scenario, what if a small piece of space junk went through the main section and hit an astronaut?
Yeah.
I mean,
or even just any part that carries the air to make the air leak out.
That could probably be solved pretty quickly. They would, find it. Actually, there have been several leaks of air on the International Space Station. It's very concerning because sometimes they can't find it right away. So the astronauts have some hacks that they use to find leaks. My favorite one is tea leaves. They float tea leaves in the air in the International Space Station, and they just watch it float around, and they'll eventually head towards where the air is leaking out.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's what you do. That's what Fix-A-Plat is. You just
Yep.
squirt goop into the air, and it naturally goes to where the hole is.
Exactly. So, yeah, a small, pea-sized hole through two sides of the International Space Station isn't going to necessarily, cause it to crash or blow up or suddenly, decompress. But if it had hit a critical system, and God forbid it hit an astronaut, yeah.
And I can't think of any simple solution. I'd like to think there's some way to put some kind of like cloud of dust or something up there that would attach to the little pieces and make them come down, but I can't think of how you would do that.
I don't know. I mean, I think the best move going forward is to limit the number of orbiting things we have above a certain level. Like everything should be planned to burn up and fall back to Earth within like a decade.
That would be nice. I'm thinking of cleaning up the old stuff. If you could make a whole bunch of cheap little tiny drones that could find them and then bring them back, but
there's no such thing as cheap and space, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, there kind of has to be, right? They say we got like 130 million fragments to bring down.
And like I mentioned earlier, this fragment in particular was very small. Smaller than a baseball. We can't track those. So how do you bring down something you can't track that's going faster than a bullet?
Yeah.
Yes, we're gonna need some kind of net.
That's what I'm thinking. Put up some kind of net and sweep them up, but
that's like sweeping up flying bullets. I mean, okay.
It is. It's also the net can't possibly be big enough and also strong enough. It's an
and then once that debris, hits the net or hits something else, all you're doing is making more debris that's still in orbit. It doesn't just fall down once it hits something.
Yeah, it's a difficult problem. It reminds me of the cleaning all the plastic out of the ocean.
Yeah, and if we don't do it, our entire space program will be grounded. If it gets out of hand, it'll be grounded.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, all right. And so I was amazed by this. I didn't know this. China's had the one-child policy. 5 years ago, they upped it to 2 children, and they just updated it to 3 children because they're facing the same problem Japan has and that America will have very soon, which is too many people like me get old and are still alive, consuming resources, and there's not enough young people to like do all the work and pay all the taxes to support these decrepit old people. And so you need young people. In America, the only way to do it is to actually let immigrants in, which is part of the huge battle in America, whether we're actually going to let the immigrants in or not. And China is now going to let people have 3 children. The thing that amazed me about this is, in America, you can't even make people take a vaccine to save their life. And in China, they tell you how many kids you can have. That's just incredible to imagine that anybody would let the government meddle in their life to that extent. And it sure is mind-blowing. It gives me a little bit of sympathy for these like angry Republicans that won't do anything. I won't pay my taxes. I don't believe the government should even count the votes or anything. I don't trust them anything about them.
Keep in mind too that a lot of these people who are very much, I don't want the government telling me what I should do. We're the same people saying, oh no, gay people can't get married.
Oh yeah.
We don't. Let's legislate, this and that, and
Right.
It's not just a matter of, we just love our liberties. It's a lot of the American politics come down to power and the maintenance thereof.
Yes. But there's a huge tradition in America of not letting the government shove you around. And as Irvin was mentioning before this podcast started, I have somehow gained a reputation of breaking rules and defying authority figures. I can't imagine how this happened, but like I said, I do have some sympathy for that attitude. Anyway, all right, and so then Irvin's got a new processor, 5 gigahertz.
5 gigahertz is coming to laptops.
How fast are they now? I mean, I heard 1 gigahertz a long time ago. I haven't checked. What are they now? 2 or 3 gigahertz?
Apparently, but now 5 is coming, or 5 is on its way to laptops. I'm sure this is just another way to catch up to Apple's M1 and whatever's coming out next week. They're trying to steal the thunder.
Well, what I heard years ago is that it's very hard to run them any faster because they generate too much heat and burn up, and that's why they started going to multiple cores. And the problem is, of course, multiple cores don't really give you better performance most of the time because most applications are not really multi-threaded. So they really have to wait for one step to be finished before they can do the next step. And so it really would be much better to make the clock rate faster if you could somehow dissipate the heat. So I guess this represents some degree of progress that way.
Right. I think that they're just scrambling to catch up to the M1.
That's true. The M1 seems to really make people happy. I've been thinking of getting one, even though it's not powerful enough, because I figure I can just put TeamViewer on my home machine and use it when I need virtual machines. Maybe that's the way to go. Anyway.
That's the way that I'm using Apache Guacamole, but yeah, same difference.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a thing to do. Have a powerful workstation at home and connect to it. Anyway, all right. And so Kaitlyn's got the Rogue Killer Drone. This is a mind-boggling idea.
So Business Insider has an article written by Joshua Zitzer going over a drone, a lethal weaponized drone that hunted a human target, essentially, without being told to. So that was completely autonomously, it hunted and killed a person on purpose. This is what it was designed to do. It was called a Kargu 2, it was Turkish drone, and it was designed specifically for warfare. And it was told, it was in a war zone type area, and was told just kill if you see someone running or whatever, and don't worry about human feedback. And so it ended up killing somebody in a completely automated fashion. And we believe that this is the first time that a robot was instructed to autonomously kill a human.
People out there making the Terminator, apparently the Turkish.
Yes, so apparently Skynet is starting, is getting its humble origins in Turkey. But of course, the Human Rights Watch is getting all up in arms saying, no more killer robots, their words.
I thought we already had like some kind of agreement not to do this, like, genetically modified humans. There are certain boundaries I thought pretty much everybody wasn't going to go over.
Well, apparently not, because like I said, the Human Rights Watch is now being a bunch of, party poopers. And this is their quote: they want a preemptive ban on the development, production, and use of fully automated autonomous weapons and killer robots.
Well, I heard actually about 10 years ago that in, I think, Iraq, the US military tried this like 3 times, and every time they did, it turned around and shot the wrong people, and they gave up for a while.
Yeah, I imagine, AI is kind of fragile, and it's not as precise as people thought it was going to be. The popular conception of AI was that it would be like humans, but smarter, without all the flaws. And what we're learning about AI is, no, it's just all the flaws of intelligence. Like it's just the type of intelligence that humans have is just inherently flawed because we deal with data sets that, have biases in them, or, aren't complete enough. And it's not intelligence is not a, strictly computational mathematical effort. There's a lot of fungibility involved.
Yeah, I was impressed by the early AIs that then become racial bigots. And it kind of shows what you created is basically just a stupid human.
Yes. Yeah, it's I mean,
Jumpstart
AI
was
has
the
taught
first
us more about
innovation.
ourselves, I think, than it has, revolutionized technology like they thought it would. And yeah, and it just shows that if you have garbage in, you get garbage out. And there's no way to control or know whether or not all your input is going to be garbage or complete enough to create a truly intelligent and predictable machine. So
Yeah, well, all right. And then, so I thought this was kind of mind-boggling. We've been talking about fast chargers. Xiaomi says they can charge a phone at 200 watts, and they get a full charge in 8 minutes. And man, I wonder if the battery can really take that and how much heat it generates and everything. But that's pretty impressive.
so 200 watts at how much voltage?
I think it's mostly 5 volts, right? They say
Yeah,
it fills
'cause
at 4,000.
So hold on a second. Okay, so 200 divided by 5 is 100 amp. Wait, no, is 40 amps. So let's do this. So AWG amps.
40 amps.
So yeah, so
Man.
40 amps would require a chassis wiring of, let's see.
They claim they can do it wirelessly.
Well, even still, you would still
cook everybody around like a microwave oven. I mean,
yeah, no, I'm so you can figure out, oh my gosh, why can I not find this right now? Wire amp. So okay, so for people at home that that don't understand what I'm going on about right now. So when you transfer electricity, there are two main things you're trying to transfer: voltage and amperage. With voltage, it doesn't matter how big your wire is. You can transfer 100 volts or 10 megavolts, the same amount using the same thickness of wire. You just all you need is more insulation, because the higher the voltage, the easier it arcs, is essentially the only thing you have to worry about. But of course, with current, you do need a thicker wire. And the reason why we have like step up and step down transformers in our electric grid is so that we can send over, megawatts or megavolts of power, and then step it down to something we can use in our house, but because the transfer of electricity only depends on the current and not the voltage, we can send that high amount of power through thinner wires. And let's see.
I know 200 watts is not out of range for normal household wiring. You can put a
No, it's not. But that's also normal household wiring also runs at 220 or 110 volts. So that's only like 2 amps.
The phone are going to have to carry a monstrous current.
Yeah, no, there's AWG current. There is a table I always go to. Max. Okay, here we go. Max current. And amps. So you would need at least you would want at least 10 gauge wire. I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, which is not impossible.
Which is not impossible, but it's also you can't see my hand, but it's pretty thick. I mean, 10 gauge is would take up a sizable amount of your phone's internal compartment. So
I know, and I'm thinking if you had a connector, you'd have a lot of sparking and corrosion on that connector.
No, not through the amps.
I guess you're right. Yeah.
So if they were doing like 110 volts.
Hey, looks like Liz showed up.
Yeah.
Hey, Liz, you want to tell us about your adventures?
I'm hacking away in a random Hampton Inn.
Oh, good. You actually went somewhere for Memorial Day.
Yeah, sort of like being at home, but in a fake Bavarian town.
Oh yeah, you told us about that. It sounds pretty charming.
That might not be the adjective I'd use to describe it. But for some folks, I'm sure it is.
It's too fake?
Little bit.
Yeah. But at least you get to travel somewhere. So people are like out traveling and like going to restaurants and acting like
totally. I mean, it's really interesting. The most interesting part of this is observing the sociological phenomenon, because you can tell like this town's it's a total tourist trap and it's packed to the brim right now, and you can tell there are people here who are like really timid about being out and people who give 0 Fs about it and probably did not ever believe that the virus was real in the first place, and are just going about life as they probably have during the whole pandemic.
Yeah, well, I plan to be one of them at DEF CON. DEF CON will be like this. A bunch of people are still super afraid. And as far as I can tell, there's no reason, just forget it, it's over.
I got the vaccine, so I kind of, and this may be, this may be to my own detriment later, who knows, but I kind of feel invincible as far as that goes. So it's not really a concern for me anymore.
Yeah, me too. I may not be invincible, but it's simple risk analysis concludes it's never going to get any better. So unless I'm going to hide in my home for the rest of my life, I might as well just abandon all caution and go out.
Yeah. I feel like, you got the vaccine and it's very confusing too. Here, I'm in a different state, and the mask rules are very confusing because there are some people, it's pretty clear cut in California, in most places, you just got to wear one. Here, not so much. Some people are walking around with them, other people aren't. There are no real clear guidelines for it.
I don't see much clarity here. As far as I know, I'm actually still breaking the rules by walking around outside without a mask in San Francisco. It's just that after the president said it's okay, everybody just does it without official recommendation. I think officially we're supposed to wear masks all over the place until June 15, but I don't really know. I don't think anybody knows or cares.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people care. Some people care a lot. They will kind of act a little act forcefully about it, but other people don't. I thought California, we were supposed to be fine with no masks outside.
I really haven't been able to keep track. But certainly you still have to wear them inside, which is not what the president said. But anyway, in June 15, which is like 2 weeks, supposedly you don't need them anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
it'll be interesting to see how things go after things reopen.
Yeah.
The hardest part about not wearing a mask outside, even though it's allowed if you are fully vaccinated, is that, at least for me, I always get the impression that people are quietly trying to figure out whether or not if I'm a fully vaccinated person or an anti-vaxxer.
Totally same.
I think here. I'm so used to everybody looking at me and assuming that I'm some kind of dangerous lunatic that it doesn't even bother me anymore. I think it was that way long before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Irvin's got Pwn passwords.
Oh, yes. Pwn passwords is going open source, and they're working with the FBI now. So the FBI is going to add their hashes to the list, and the whole goal is to make it easier so you can use an API to add into tools to search if somebody has a already known password.
And the thing that I was amazed about, Troy Hunter's a great guy, and he's like an official Microsoft guy. And so Have I Been Pwned runs in .NET. And that really surprised me. That would not have been my first choice.
Yeah. And also using the Azure blob and storage and a bunch of other stuff and Cloudflare too.
Well, he's a Microsoft guy, so his answer to everything is to put it in the Microsoft stuff. I guess that's all right.
Yeah. But pretty cool that it's going open source, and it will hopefully be even more accessible for people to add into their tools or infrastructure.
Yeah, that's what I heard. The FBI is going to automatically upload stuff they get from compromised servers that they raid and stuff. So yeah, it'd be good, I guess. We'll have a better plan for passwords. Although I think everybody should just be going to two-factor these days.
Yeah.
And the last one I just thought was awesome was we're now going to have genetically modified salmon sold for food to Americans. They've genetically modified the salmon to mature twice as fast. And they're sending it to places who will use it for takeout and stuff. There are certain food channels in America where they do not have to tell you if the food is genetically modified, and that's where it's going. And there's only like one food sales shop that has actually openly admitted that they're selling GM salmon because everybody else is afraid that somebody will think there's something wrong with it. So it's another brave new world, like, autonomous killer drones. And this is all nuclear power. A bunch of people are like very, very, very against it, saying it's unnatural. And then there's a bunch of people with fairly logical arguments saying, it's just a way to speed up the kind of genetic modification we did by selectively breeding plants to make like corn and dogs and stuff. But anyway, we're going to have GM salmon. As a matter of fact, I guess if you buy cheap salmon, it's going to be GM already. I think all the corn I buy is GM corn because it's the cheapest corn.
Yum.
Well, the scientists argue that it's really not bad for you. A certain amount of people, like Whole Foods, said, we're absolutely not touching this stuff. Our whole brand is that we don't have any GM anything. And, it's there if you want it. I think Europe is very much on that side. No GM food. Take this junk out of here. Anyway, well, I guess that's it. And I'm glad you got to take a trip somewhere, Elizabeth.
Yeah, it's good it's kind of a crazy trip, but it's kind of nice to have a little bit of a change of venue.
Oh yeah. I'm looking forward to traveling to Vegas and stuff and starting to resume normal life. Anyway, well, I guess that's it for this, and we'll be back on Friday.